What's up, and welcome back to Congruent Academy, the place for people in process. Cal here, and I had just listened back to that first episode of Congruent Conversations that I released last week, and I'm so excited. It felt like I was rambling for a good amount of that podcast, but again, this is the place for people in process, and I'm getting my act together one video at a time, so you shouldn't expect that I have it all figured out, and that's the journey that I'm on right now. Not to figure everything out, of course, that's not possible, but like I said, to just get a little bit better each video. So that's the goal with this one. I've decided, after reflecting on that first episode and hearing that back, by the way, it's always so strange to hear your own voice, isn't it? So anyway, I've decided that to start this episode off, I'd like to do something completely different from what I did last time in the introduction. I'm going to start by reflecting on this past year and how that applies to some of the goals that I might be thinking about for the year ahead. Right now we're in December 2021, and this time of year, a lot of people out there are surely doing the same thing, taking stock of all the lessons that they'd learned, making plans for the year ahead. A lot of that often results in New Year's resolutions, which I'm planning to make a video on in the near future. Now, I started producing videos on this channel this year, but I actually created the channel in 2019. There's a video that I made on that process, on that lapse, that I'll plug right here for you to watch if you haven't seen it already. And so through the year, in reflection, I've posted rather infrequently, and I'm planning on changing that from here on out. I intend to change that from here on out. The way I see it, deciding to show up for myself means coming here and checking in with you, sharing my wins, sharing your wins, and reflecting on lessons all the while, sometimes with guests, sometimes solo. Why? YOLO. And so in the pursuit of incremental progress, something that I tried to do was to keep a record of my progress across time so that I could, in theory, see a trajectory, see my progress unfold in what I imagined to be a line graph or a bar graph or something to that effect. But I didn't keep that consistently. I failed to keep that consistently, and I feel that that's for a few reasons. Namely, that I was trying to record my progress across so many goals, and if you look back on my Instagram page, which happens to be quite inactive at the moment, bear in mind, you can look back far enough and you can see those posts. And so, in not being able to keep a consistent record of my progress, I wasn't able to see my progress across time, and that makes me feel pretty sad, to be honest. It's a little discouraging to know that I had been trying to log my progress across habits that I was trying to form for myself, but wasn't able to track it consistently enough for that to stick, and thus, in looking back over the year, I have a limited data set to work with. I thought about why I was trying to measure my progress. What was the goal anyway? Was the goal to have some vanity metric of a bar chart that could show you that I'm reading more pages each day on average than I used to? And what does such a metric ultimately try to prove? On one hand, maybe it's proving that I'm improving, I suppose, in that that's a measurable increase, pages read. But what's the value of pages read if I've not understood what I've read? I suppose it's good to have a record of my wins, and it's important to keep track of my reps, especially as I'm working to build upon incremental progress. And you need momentum. You need to steady momentum and consistency to do that and to see how you're doing across time to make changes in an informed way. And that didn't really stick this past year. I had the right approach, I believe, in that I wanted to start slow and then build momentum across time. So I'll keep that next year. But still, there was a lack of structure, as well as asking too much of myself too fast, which resulted in this certain propensity to drift away from the goals that I had set for myself. And I can't really stand to have too many more of such years. I don't want to. I want to have more to show for it. I want to have skills that I've been able to build. And maybe that can be a part of what you see here on Congruent Academy. Maybe that process would be something of interest to you. If it is, let me know. But right now, I'm just going to lie down right here on the storied stream of consciousness. Burrito. You are thinking about burritos and how it is that when you try to cook them on your stove, an instant cooker, they don't turn out the way you want them to, i.e., like the ones that you pay far too much for in a box of a store, inside so many other boxes, in a store, on a planet that is just spinning around like there's no tomorrow. And holy heck, you think about this channel and what people out there must be thinking about it. And then you remember that you only have to be true to yourself and do what makes you feel passionate. And so the tone changes entirely. Drip, 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 drip. The water here continues to churn, just like the way my mind turns on after being so switched off in the glaze of a screen malaise. And when I rub my eyes and look up and see the blue bright light sky above me, I wonder if the sky would ripple like the surface of this water when I skip a pebble down the stream. Now, let's get back into the show.
I'm just speaking on what someone else has spoke. It's the quote, it's the quote, it's the quote, it's the quote. Whoop whoop.
This week's quote is brought to you by a future sponsor. A future sponsor because living the dream requires requisite green. The quote this week comes from the late, great Albert Einstein, who once said, "Education is not the learning of facts. It is the training of the mind to think." I chose this quote because I'd spent an hour today going over the goals that I had set out for myself at the beginning of this year, and found that a lot of the targets that I'd set around my learning goals in particular were arbitrary relative to this quote. One such example that pretty much sums this up was how I was approaching my goal of reading books. I had set myself the goal of reading 52 books this year, about one per week. Actually, exactly one per week, which on its surface isn't a bad goal. Reading is something I'd like to say that I do every day, though at this stage, I don't. More on that in a later episode. And I thought that the metric of 52 speaks to that in some degree, because if I'm reading one book per week, it would infer that I'd be reading each day to accomplish that goal. But the goal, read 52 books in a year, doesn't take into account whether or not I'd absorbed any of the information contained therein. It doesn't speak to the quality of my reading. It doesn't address the impact of my reading. It really ultimately satisfies the egoic drive to have a bookshelf full of books that I could say to anyone I had read. Could I say that I had explored the themes in depth, or pursued questions from within the texts, or taken lessons from the reading out into the way that I interface with the world, using the words contained in these books, in these 52 books? Again, this qualitative aspect was not deemed as relevant in the way that I had positioned myself in relationship to the goal. I think I may have read a little less than half of that amount of books this year. But again, going back to the quote, what is the ultimate goal of my learning? According to this quote, which is a welcome reminder to me, the pursuit of education, self-education or otherwise, can be as fruitful or fruitless as the values that we attribute to said pursuit. So I'm going to try to bring the quality of this quote into how I educate myself in the coming year, and I'll be bringing more of that into the fold with the next iterations of videos to follow on the channel. Ultimately, I want a portion of my content to be speaking to the process of habituating that which can increase one's quality of life, i.e., getting my act together one video at a time. And this quote informs that pursuit by staying connected to the deeper process of becoming, rather than the flashy ability to impress with the recalling of facts. So, let's use this quote to frame the next segment, the word of the week.
Word of the week. Word of the week. Learn your vocabulary.
This week's word of the week is threshold. 1. The plank, stone, or piece of timber that lies under a door. 2. A gate, door. End, boundary. The place or point of entering or beginning. 3. The point at which a physiological or psychological effect begins to be produced. A level, point, or value above which something is true or will take place, below which it is not or will not. Used in a sentence. I've had far too many years in an unproductive cycle wherein the trajectory of accomplishment looks less like this and more like this. However, now that I approach learning in a way that is cyclical, spiralical, and iterative, I feel I am now arriving at a threshold of truly being able to increase my quality of life sustainably. Let's see if I can meaningfully cross it each and return to it every day. Give the word of the week a try in the comments section below. And now, this week's segment of r/deciding to be better.
If you want to make a change today, you are/deciding to be better.
And that's a good thing. Yeah.
As always, and as referenced last week, I am not a therapist, nor am I a mental health professional, nor am I here to be a guru/life coach at all. Period. End of story. This is really just a process of me getting my act together one video at a time, and what better place to look for inspiration for that than this subreddit r/deciding to be better. So with that, let's get into it. First one's by user u/Cornelius Farva, titled, "Got rid of the last of my Confederate stuff." For a very long time, I was a hardcore rebel yeller, had the flags and such, history, not hate, all of that. I think I related to those beliefs because I was misunderstood and an outcast my entire life, and so were they. After events last year, not just in the news, but in my personal life, I began the process of eradication little by little. Working on emotional intelligence and having a better group of friends really helped me to let that stuff go. And there was a lot to get rid of: books, movies, memorabilia, etc. Last week, I finished by putting the last of my Confederate and other similar white supremacy stuff in the trash. I can't change the past, but all I can do is move forward. Edit. I am extremely humbled by the outpouring of support. Thank you all. Here at Congruent Academy, one of the things that I'm hoping to eventually start to be even the smallest bit a part of is the process of confronting and addressing and hopefully transcending all of this polarization that we seem to be experiencing in the Western world. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to get to that anytime soon, but I certainly do believe at this point in my life that ideologies such as the one that this user used to ascribe to do nothing but drive us further apart as people. And that's true on the left and the right, politically speaking, I believe. What's particularly striking about this post is the reality it enables us all to reflect on the fact that it's a welcome reminder that change is possible, that people can and do change every day. And it's a process. And in that process, this person has been able to work at it little by little, developing skills that they might have lacked, finding healthier ways of meeting their social needs, and ultimately changing their environment, which reflected their own change within. So I'm grateful that this person shared their story. It takes bravery, especially given the nature of the times that we're in, to admit that this was part of their journey, particularly if the person has a certain sense of who they are in the world. So well done. 2 comes from user R34LZ, titled, "I have brushed my teeth every night and morning for 60 days straight, and it feels amazing. I used to not brush my teeth before bed because I was always working late until 3 a.m. and then was too tired to brush. I have finally made a habit to brush my teeth by drinking a lot of water before bedtime, then having to go to the bathroom. That's when I brush my teeth. I know it shouldn't be something you should be proud of, as everyone brushes their teeth, but for me, it was a hard habit to introduce to my lifestyle. I also sleep earlier now. Now I just have to start flossing more often." Again, well done to this poster. 60 days. That's a great record to have, especially when it comes to things like dental hygiene. Something that I imagine this poster experienced in this process was being able to feel more confident through not only knowing that they're going to have a cleaner smile, but also knowing that they've become a more consistent person. And while, yes, many people reading it might not see this as the biggest gold medal moment in someone's life, I think a lot of people, myself included, read it and remember times when even doing such a thing as brushing my teeth would have been considered impossible, whether that be through circumstances or times when I was really feeling low. It'd be hard to take that requisite care of yourself. But in order to rebuild momentum, you have to start where you are and build from there. So well done. I'm glad that this person shared this story. I think that a lot of people, again, myself included, know what that feels like, and keep going. Get that flossing in next. Who knows where you'll be next year? Number 3, last post by user u/Las Papayas. I worked out every single day for 3 weeks straight. I am so goddamn proud of myself. Listen, I'm not a big fart. Listen, I'm not a big fan of working out. I hate sweating and I hate being in pain afterwards, but I knew things had to change. I was gaining weight rapidly, and my health was obviously deteriorating. I couldn't live with myself any longer and just decided, fuck it. I just have to start somewhere. All I had to do was show up and do something, anything, as long as I wasn't in bed scrolling endlessly on Reddit. I began by going on short walks for a few days and then gradually moved on to inclined treadmill jogs. 10 minutes went to 15 minutes to 20 minutes and etc. There were days when I mentally and physically couldn't be fucked to do anything, but I kept nudging myself and telling myself that I needed to do at least 10 minutes. The least I could do was 10 minutes just to build up the momentum. To my surprise, on the days that I told myself I couldn't do it, I did much more than I intended, because I guess once I was already at the gym, I wanted to make my time there worthwhile. I completed a 3-kilometer incline jog in about 30 minutes. The numbers could be better, but for me, that was a very good start. After 2.5 weeks of consistently walking and incline jogs and 10 to 15 minutes of bodyweight exercises every day with 1 or 2 rest days, I finally became more confident to start doing harder workouts. I am now doing a 2 weeks fitness challenge. It's been 3 days of planks, lunges, squats, sit-ups, etc., and I'm feeling the burn. Don't get me wrong, I still hate exercising, and sometimes I have to muster every ounce of energy I have to just show up. But I know at the end of every workout, I feel accomplished and pleased with myself. Tomorrow is my rest day, and I am looking forward to resting and doing nothing. LOL. Lastly, I'd like to say how grateful I am to have found this sub. I don't think I would have even started without stumbling upon this page. I was inspired and motivated by everyone here who decided to do better for themselves. So thank you to all of you for being so supportive. I want to continue working out every single day if possible, and eventually lose more weight and gain muscle. I also want to quit smoking weed and combat my scrolling addiction completely, but that's a battle for another day. For now, I am so happy with my little progress, and I can't wait to do better every single day. Merry Christmas, and have a wonderful rest of the year to all of you. Edit. I fixed spelling and typos. Now see this is what incremental progress is all about. This is what it looks like. Starting that small. At the least you know you have to do. The least you know you can do. I admire that this poster is still through all of this progress, 3 weeks, which is a great accomplishment, still being real about how they feel about working out, but being even realer about how things would work out if they didn't. Like I said, beginning with the minimal amount that one can manage. This applies to any skill, I believe. Many skills. It's all about just forging that habit of consistently showing up, because before you know it, you're able to increase from 10 to 15 to 20. And it will be a struggle on days. Days like when this person mentally and physically couldn't be asked to do anything, but telling themselves that they needed to do at least 10 minutes. It was a great surprise to learn that on those days that they didn't want to do any of the work, they ended up doing a lot more than they intended to. I guess that goes to show that the days where you least want to show up for yourself matter the most when you do, because it's like getting the reps in and having the discipline of the habit transcend a mental or emotional state, then allows one to change that mental or emotional state, even temporarily. I know for me, when I push through a barrier or obstacle that's keeping me from doing something productive, when I do that productive thing, the next time around, I'm able to make that decision even faster, with more resolve. I'm more conditioned as a result. And what I really appreciate about this poster's journey is that it's a trajectory. where the exercises are getting more sophisticated. That's also the approach of learning any skills, starting with something rudimentary, and then gradually, as your competency improves, taking more on. I tend to try to do too much too fast, and as a result, I've done myself a disservice at many times, experiencing burnout, deep discouragement, because the goals that I set for myself weren't congruent with the skills that I had at the time. That's not to say that's not to say they would be impossible for me to do. Obviously, if I set myself out to do them, I believe that they were possible to a degree. But incremental progress is the sustainable way to work towards a goal, I've learned. I'm able to avoid injuring myself and keep a positive momentum and trajectory that makes the journey more fulfilling than just reaching that goal. And to the original poster's last paragraph, it's good to know that someone else there finds this page inspiring and supportive, and I'm grateful to have found it as well. So well done to the OP here. That concludes this segment of r/deciding to be better. Now for this week's half-formed thought, broadcasting live from the Hall of Half-Formed Thoughts. What if learning didn't look like this, and instead looked like this? And now, the week in review. Presented by a future sponsor. This week, I took stock of my year and started planning for the year ahead. I took stock of a lot of things that went well and a lot of things that, frankly, I dropped the ball on. And what I learned about myself is that through the year, I lost connection to my why at times. And then the work that I was trying to undertake became uninspired, and gradually I found myself prioritizing the things that mattered more to me in those moments. Unfortunately, that wasn't always the task at hand, which made me realize that I may need to strategize how I approach my life and the process of becoming. And so, thinking about that led me to question, what does getting my act together one video at a time really look like? That's a question that I'll be exploring in the year ahead on this channel. And something I thought would be a good thing to end on for this episode is to reflect on what it is that I was trying to do and how I'm going to try to do it even better next year. So let's start with what I felt went wrong strategically. To sum up my experience of the year relevant to my goals, I led with a bold vision of the future, one that I knew if I could achieve would mean that things would be better in my life. And I tried to do too much of too much too fast. Does that make sense? I spread myself too thin. And as I said earlier, I lost touch with the why. I stopped paying attention to the meaning and relevance of each day as a stepping stone, and I let myself get discouraged. But it wasn't all that way. I'd like to think that I'm ending the year quite strong, having learned from all of this, and I'm confident with the lessons that I've learned that I'll be able to continue on a more promising trajectory in the year ahead. And accordingly, I've adjusted my plan for the year to be more holistic towards the goals. And so, what is it that I'm really talking about, right? This is all kind of heady stuff. So let's take, for example, a goal of reading more. What is the goal in saying that I want to read more? Is it to show that I'm just reading more pages of a book than I was the week before? And is that the right thing to be focused on? What if instead I was focused on being stimulated creatively and intellectually, focusing on actually learning new things and having new perspectives as a point of reference to be a more informed individual? And yes, ultimately, it would be great to habituate reading as a habit, and daily practice and develop my skills as a reader or indeed in any domain across time. And I'll have more to say on that in the next week's episode. And so in sum, when I'm thinking about my year's experience and the goals that I set for myself, I want the quality to matter more than the quantity. Yes, quantity to a degree, but quality time reading, quality time exploring, that's what I know that I need for myself. That might mean pursuing a whole host of different things so that in the process I can be able to develop and hone my interests and passions. And that's a journey that I'm really excited to share with you in the coming videos ahead. So thank you for joining me. It's my privilege to have you here. So now we will end with the prompt.
I wanna know what you have to say.
The question for those who listen and or view to respond to. Man, this is a process in and of itself. So I'd like to open this up for discussion in the comments section below. What are you learning right now? And as a part 2, what is one thing that you learned this year that you're going to bring into next year? I'm looking forward to reading what you all have to say in the coming week. And now we'll conclude the episode. Thanks so much for watching. And until next time, power to the people in process.